Okay, so a running joke between me and my friends is that I am psychic. Okay. And I'm not really psychic. I don't have this magical bestowed gift from the heavens, or do I? No, I wouldn't have student finance if I was psychic. I would be that house lottery that keeps getting promoted to me on my Instagram. I would be in that house. I'd be a millionaire. Everything. I'd be doing shows and shit. Like, we would not have a science themed podcast. I would be getting people to write in with their problems and predict their future, but everybody has to pay it. Like, sorry, the capitalist society. But a running joke between me and my friends is that I'm psychic, and I'm not really psychic, but I do spend a lot of time predicting and thinking and feeling and reading people and creating character profiles of people in my head based off of the information that I have and how they are most likely to react to a situation and what I think. And to my friends, brilliant benefit. Honestly, sometimes to me, an amazing benefit because I am able to give such sound advice to people and really just root my information based off of character arcs and be like, actually, based off of what I've been thinking about you, this is what I think. I think I'm a professional pattern spotter. I think that's how I got into science. I think that's why I do so well in terms of like music and podcasts and just reading people, is that I'm like so good at clocking patterns, and I should probably go and get myself an autism diagnosis. But that's probably reductive for the autism spectrum. And I was having a conversation with someone the other day and I was thinking, where does this come from? Because things don't just pop up in your life. And I guess maybe your brain can be skewed to be more talented or more good at certain things than other things. But yeah, I was talking to a friend about where this potentially came from. And this is something I've always had in a sense. Like, I think I've always been very good at reading people almost, not in a way that's like I've had like lots of traumatic experiences, but I just think I'm really intrigued by people and I'm really interested. And so I just like thinking about people. Why are people the way they are? What do they do? But it's never been like a massive thing. And it's never been in an effort to predict what might happen or to predict what somebody might do. It's always been rooted in the concept of, oh, like, I just want to understand people. I just think I'm interested in people. And so it was like, oh, this matches this person's character. This matches this person's character. But it wasn't an effort to try and predict and like shortcut and like cut the way. Um, but when I got to uni, I think that is when it really, really exacerbated. And I've spoken a little bits and pieces about my uni experience before on this podcast, but I feel like one day I need to like sit down and give you guys the rundown, first year to third year, all of like the crazy, ridiculous, borderline traumatizing and amazing fun times and experiences that I had, because it's so crazy. I think I actually do want to do that podcast episode because it'd also be really nice to document that and have that documented piece of my life. And maybe get some of my Cambridge friends, like Angela and Sim, Garrett, like we can sit down and we just like dissect this. My second year of uni, I basically lost like majority of the people that I was friends with. I basically like 90% of my original friend group that I had in the beginning of first year were not friends with me anymore. There were a lot of clashes between people, and essentially it came to like a point where it was like, yeah, it was so much friction. I think I'm a very confrontational person, and I've actually really made an active effort over the past 2-3 years to be confrontational without being aggressive and mean and a bitch. Like, just learning how to speak my mind and say my truth and say my piece in a way that doesn't offend or hurt somebody, because there is ways to be confrontational without being mean or aggressive or hurtful. So in my opinion, if I have an issue with someone, that person knows. If I don't like something somebody did, that person knows pretty much as soon as I clock I don't like it. And that thing is discussed and we moved on. But coming into uni, a lot of people weren't like that. And so I think a lot of people, things that I would think, oh, we're all good, because if there was a problem, they'd come and tell me, never really happened until it did. And it just, guys, I shit you not, there was one time, they're never gonna listen to this. There was one time I was sat and this person like sat and just basically gave me a list of everything that I had done wrong to them in 2 years, like the 2 years that we had known each other, things that I was even unaware of, things that I didn't even think about, or deep, things that I also thought was not that deep, but it was just the fact this person kept a running list. And from that point on, I developed the worst anxiety I've ever had in my life. I had the worst panic attacks known to man. And I would get really nervous when I would go to events and stuff, because I was like, oh my God, now they've gone and told people this fat list of, like, all of these people to take me. Do you get what I mean? Like, all of these people, I'm sure they've like gone and told their other friends that they think I'm such a terrible person. And like, I just convinced myself so strongly in my mind that at a drop of a hat, all of these people could hate me in a really weird sense. And it gave me this crippling sense of anxiety, because I just could not tell you how people felt about me. And I hated it. I absolutely hated it. I would go out to events and I'd like stand there by myself or self-isolate in events because I was so worried that somebody would come and smile and talk to me and I'd feel like I had a friend, but they weren't really my friend. Like they were just trying to get something out of me, get some kind of information, prove a point, catch me out, try and figure out, oh, is she really this horrible person? Like I'd painted this entire, honestly, now that I reflect on it, potentially probably really false perception of how I thought this group of people felt around me. And so in my second year of uni, a lot of it I'd spent by myself because again, I was so nervous and scared and had really massive panic attacks. And I could label, like I literally had 3 people that did not give me a panic attack after I spent time with them. I love them, by the way. We are still really good friends. They're like one of them actually got me this. Like that's how good friends they are. They gave me this. If you're watching on video, it's the podcast logo on a screen uh on a canvas, and it's really cool. But yeah, so I used to, and I think from that point on I really started developing this character reading, catching people's looks, catching people's eyebrow raises, and adding it to my character profile of them, and catching conversations and catching things, and like trying to predict the future. Because if I could predict whether or not somebody had a problem with me, then I could curb this anxiety that I felt, and I could find a way to either sort it out or distance myself before like my world came crashing down again. Unfortunately, when you start being able to predict things and then you get things right, it becomes addictive, because you're like, oh, confirmation bias. Like, oh, if I predicted this right, why isn't the next thing I predict correct? And why isn't the next thing I predict correct? And why isn't the next thing I predict correct? And you start to find this sense of comfort, especially when you're unsure of yourself, about being able to read people and trying to predict what they do next, right? And unfortunately, when this happened, you start to begin to apply this concept to everything. So I started, instead of only just applying it to people in my life and people in other people's lives, I would apply it to jobs. I'd apply it to dating. I'd apply it to family. I'd post a TikTok video and think, what would the potential reaction of this TikTok video be? And it's just me talking about superheroes. And I think, oh my God, this one person in uni is going to see this and send it to here and then laugh at me, blah, blah, blah. And there is no proof that that concept is true, but it was such a limiting belief that I had that it kind of stopped me from taking risks, from getting opportunities, from interacting with people, from doing things, because I would convince myself that my predictions were always correct. And I had such an accurate, objective perspective of the world that what I think is what actually is. And when I sat down one day and I was tutoring a student, an A-level chemistry student, and we were talking about the concept of entropy from a chemistry sense, I began to question and poke at this concept of entropy. And I found a way that this concept might revolutionize or change my perspective of how I see my special psychic skills. And I've kind of curated this episode today to talk about the concept of entropy and kind of provide, I don't want to call it like this novel philosophical idea because I don't think it is. I think it's a framing or a really intentional framework that I think really helped break through to me about a better way to frame your life. So in today's episode, I'm going to be talking about the concept of entropy and how I think it might change your life.
Female genius.
Okay, let's start laying some of the groundwork because first and foremost, you are probably going to ask me, what the hell is entropy? As a chemist and as a scientist, I probably best understand entropy from the perspective of chemistry, and that's how I'm going to explain it to you today, right? And I'm going to explain it like you are a 5-year-old. Now, you probably, if you have done A-level chemistry or chemistry beyond GCSE I don't know if many Americans watch my podcast, like 5th grade. What's 5th grade? 5th grade is year 6. So if you've done like AP chemistry, I'm so good. I watch too many shows. If you've done AP chemistry or A-level chemistry or anything of the sort, right, you've probably learned this idea that entropy is a measure of disorder in a system. And that can be quite confusing to conceptualize, honestly, because of the limitations of the English language, right? But I think it's misleading because you think disorder, you think chaos, you think explosions, and it just doesn't really help you understand exactly what entropy is talking about. So let me reframe the standard chemistry definition before I go on to explore some other perspectives and the foundation of what we're going to be talking about more in today's episode. So this guy called Ludwig Boltzmann ages ago developed an alternative interpretation of entropy, leading on from the original classical thermodynamic definition of entropy, which is all to do with heat and the movement of heat and the movement of energy with that heat, essentially. Kind of irrelevant, so I'm not going to go into it, right? Ludwig Boltzmann instead creates a famous equation. The equation is entropy equals Boltzmann constant times the natural log of the number of microstates consistent with the macrostates. Stay with me here. I know I've lost some people. I'll bring it back, okay? Microstates are basically the arrangement or the number of arrangements of particles, like, in their positions, kind of occupy this state and different shapes. Think about like Twister, I can put my hand up here, I can put my hand down, I can put my hand to the side, I can put my hand to the left. Those are different positions that my body can take on, right? It sounds so crazy. Um, Sorry, my brain is in a really weird place when it comes to innuendos because I've spent the past 3 days trying to make as many innuendos as possible as a joke between me and my friends. So if I make a weird giggle, I can't be asked to cut it out. So please bear with me. Anyway, macrostates are defined as the properties of the bulk, essentially, like pressure and temperature and volume. So in summary, we can kind of chemically define entropy as a function that quantifies the number of ways a system can arrange itself without changing its macroscopic properties, again, such as pressure and volume and temperature. Right? A good example of this that might frame all of this in a way that makes sense is if we take solid water, aka ice, right? As ice, the molecules of water can only be positioned or are only in certain can only be made in certain positions, kind of thing. It's rigid, right? Because it's a solid. It can only exist in so many microstates per se. Whereas if we melted it and turned it into liquid, liquid water, it moves around, it can take on lots and different shapes, right? So therefore it has many more microstates than ice or solid water. And that means that liquid water has a higher entropy because it can occupy more microstates than ice, who has a lot lower entropy because, again, it can't occupy as much microstates, without changing bulk properties such as pressure changing or volume or temperature changing. That is what we mean by entropy, right? So entropy, I guess, is a form of understanding the probability of the number of ways a natural system can occupy and distribute itself and evolve. And I think this is very, very cool. And you can see it span many different biological, chemistry, and physical systems as well. And I'm a nerd for entropy. But other than the chemical definition, as I was kind of doing my research and thinking about, okay, what is entropy? Like, I wanted to learn more. I wanted to understand a little bit more about the concept, trying to solidify almost this picture and this framework of life that I'm trying to get from this topic. And one definition I found was found in information theory by this person called Claude Shannon. And in information theory, they define entropy slightly differently, although you can kind of see how they marry and work with each other. Right? In information theory, they say that entropy is a measure of uncertainty or information content. Basically, uncertainty is an outcome of a random variable, right? So the higher the entropy, the more uncertainty there is about a situation or a piece of information. But that means when an action is carried out, right, more information is gained when the outcome is revealed, and that helps improve the system. AKA, if let's say you were playing a video game and you didn't know whether you needed to go left or right? You've never been in this video game before, you never played it, you don't know anything about it. So there's a high level of entropy because there's a high level of uncertainty with what might happen if you go left or right. However, because of that, if you then choose to go left or right, the amount of information that you gain is so much more than when you just stand still and not take that decision at all. So rather than framing entropy as chaos and destruction, right, it can often mean information, surprise, knowledge, and how much you can learn once an outcome has been revealed. It's more about the shape of the possibilities of what might happen in the future rather than all of the things that might possibly go wrong and the chaos and destruction and the end of the world and the apocalypse that the idea of entropy being a measure of disorder might say.
Female genius.
Right? I think honestly, when it comes to my predictive habits, it's a way of shying away from uncertainty. It's not being comfortable with this idea that I might not know what might happen and being okay in existing in this lack of knowledge. If we shy away from uncertainty, we don't allow ourselves to experience growth. We will never grow as people because we will never be exposed to information that is fundamental to building the character and the people that we need to become and need to be. And one example I use is in the anime One Piece. Guys, somebody complained to me the other day. Hold on, actually, I'm not sorry. Somebody complained to me the other day that I use too many anime examples and nerdy examples in this podcast. This podcast is called Female Genius, okay? Another word for genius is a flipping nerd, okay? And I feel like I explain context very well. I'm sorry, okay? I'll give you two examples, okay? Just for you guys who don't watch anime, I'll give two examples. But let's start with One Piece, okay? Pretty time skip in terms of One Piece and Luffy's character. Luffy, our main character in One Piece, is very free-spirited. His dream is to become the king of pirates and go around adventuring, right? He's kind and he's courageous, but he isn't really quite aware of the complexities of the world he inhabits, right? And this can be seen in various scenes such as his interactions with the world government and the celestial dragons. He has like this childlike sense of justice. I'm going to fight you because you hurt my friend, without a deep understanding of what that means in the world that he currently occupies and the journey that he wants to take. We have the arc Marineford, which is one of the greatest anime war arcs of all time, which represents almost this collapse of innocence. This Marineford war arc is an event of high entropy. There are so many different possibilities. There are so many unknown variables and factors that us, even as the viewers and readers, couldn't even predict the outcome. I bet you Oda didn't even know what was going to happen when he first started writing Marineford, right? Because this is a monster of an arc. And whilst the outcome was disappointing and heartbreaking and had me crying and sobbing in the middle of the night, right, it taught Luffy a very, very important lesson. And as a result, post-time skip, post-Marineford, he has greater emotional depth. He understands the stakes of his journey, especially the burden of protecting others, right? His core value and core guiding principle of freedom has now been refrained from just being this absolute need to just do whatever you want in life and have a great adventure and have a fun time. But he understands that freedom comes at a massive cost. Right? It's not just sailing through the world and having adventures. It's about confronting oppressive systems and breaking others free too, as if others are not free, then are you really free yourself? Luffy begins to understand the ramifications and the cost of the journey that he's now going to go on. He even begins to mirror the influences of the character Roger, who we know dies before the journey and the tales of One Piece even started, and he was one of the world's greatest king of pirates, and honestly who Luffy aims to be. And we see he starts becoming more and more like Roger, laughing in the face of impossible truths, laughing in the first instance of uncertainty because he knows he's going to gain a lot of knowledge from it without sacrificing this idea of freedom and what it comes at a cost of, right? Each moment makes him stronger. As he gains knowledge from each and every fight and each and every interaction, he becomes a more and more closer to his goal of truly becoming the king of the pirates, truly becoming like Roger. Even if you think To All the Boys I've Ever Loved Before, right? The concept of To All the Boys I've Ever Loved Before is that we have Lara Jean who has a crush on all of these boys, and instead of pursuing these crushes or even asking them out or like engaging in the world of romance, she sits and just writes stories because she has convinced herself that the entropy is too high. She doesn't need to know anything she won't gain. And so as a result, her romantic life has stood still, like nothing has ever really happened. And then her really annoying but completely endearing little sister Kitty decides that she's going to mail out all of the letters that Lara Jean wrote to all of her crushes as a way of releasing them without actually telling them to all of the boys that she's ever loved before, aka the name of the thing, right? And while this is harrowing and honestly every girl's worst nightmare, it has allowed Lara Jean to experience a lot of life. She understands things more, right? She now gets the crush. She now learns, she develops, she grows. She understands what she wants more in life. She understands what she doesn't want. She goes through situations and interactions that allow her to build her character, all because she entered a situation of high entropy, of high uncertainty, because there's so much knowledge to gain from those kind of situations. Every training arc ever, every moment, every character defining thing, me developing this ability to quote unquote predict the future, people going through really hard times and really, really amazing times, they're always preceded by events of high entropy, right? An outcome that provides knowledge and ignites change.
Female genius.
Another really cool aspect of entropy, actually, let me continue nerding about my subject, right? Is this notion or this thing that entropy requires a particular direction of time, which we often call the arrow of time in physics, right? And this is governed or underpinned or moved by the second law of thermodynamics, which implies as one goes forward in time, the entropy of an isolated system can increase but never decrease. You can't go backwards. And a good example in terms of framing what this scientifically means, if I drop a glass on the floor, I can't get that glass back as originally as it was. Like there is no way to do that. So as a result, entropy is really cool because it serves as a measurement of distinguishing the past from the future from a physical sense, but also a psychological one. Right? You can stand still in your bed and things are still going to come for you. When an event happens to you, you can't go back, unfortunately, but you can begin to learn the lesson. There's a really cool Japanese concept if we're going along the lines of smashed glass, which is where basically if a piece of really beautiful vase or a vase breaks, then they put it back together with these really beautiful gold detailing as a way of showing that beautiful things or broken things can be made beautiful once again. Even though things smash, you might not get it back in its original state, but it can be reinforced, it can be stronger, it can be made more beautiful. Almost this idea of anti-fragility encapsulated in an art form. I cannot remember what it's called for the life of me, and I really need to do that. Um, But in essence, all of this information is so important. And as you get older and you leave the confines of your home, you graduate from uni, you graduate from school, right? The possibilities and the options almost become infinite, right? And it becomes endless. And there's so much possible information that you need to gather, and the things and the things and how you want to measure life and what you want to find, it becomes endless to the point where it can be kind of crippling. And then we develop coping mechanisms such as me trying to predict the future. For some people, it's physical substances, it's alcohol, it's avoidance, it's going down a path that their dad states is for them without realizing and recognizing, even though they had that voice in the back of the head that is not really supposed to be for them. All of these different things happen. I had the opportunity yesterday, literally, to meet an amazing thought leader in terms of power, change, and democracy called Marshall Gand when I went back to Homerton College in Cambridge yesterday. And he said something that was so like, I was like, how did he know I was about to record this podcast episode tomorrow? How, like, God must have told him or something. Oh, I was like, oh, because it literally hits the nail on the head. And I'm quoting him directly. These are not words of my own, you know, but he said something that was basically like a caution against preparation or hyper preparation, I might say. Knowledge flows from action, it doesn't precede it, right? We need to act, and the act of acting involves uncertainty. But unless we act, we cannot begin learning what we need to learn and what we want to learn to have the outcomes that we seek. And is that not the most beautiful framing of entropy and the fact that we do need to go find these things out? We do need to enter these situations that are scary and sometimes uncertain to figure out what we want in life. You need to go ahead and sign up for that uni course and do the first year of the uni to realize, hey, I fucking hate this and this was miserable. You do need to go on a date with that guy you keep staring at the gym because you flirt and everything, and go out and figure out, wow, he has terrible breath, I don't want this. Or wow, actually, maybe I don't like boys, maybe I like girls. Like, every single thing is an opportunity to gain information and understand yourself better. And if you avoid things, whether it's through predicting or fear or anxiety and all of these things, you limit your opportunity and your access to the growth that will make you're stunting yourself. Basically, you're making yourself 5'1" when you could be 6'5" and playing in the NBA. Now, how do we begin to embrace entropy is probably the most logical follow on from my rant, essentially. And I think the idea of balance, yin and yang, and something that perpetuates itself in Ayurveda and a lot of different, almost ancient traditional forms of advice of how to live life, right, is, both low entropy and high entropy events are equally as important as each other. What I'm not saying is let's go out and be crazy. Let's run down the street naked, snorting lines of things we should not be snorting for the sake of it. Like, it's like, F it. Why am I even awake? Let's just permanently, let's find out what that happened. Let's be grounded, let's be real, let's be geniuses. Geniuses. Um, you need both low entropy things and high entropy things to become grounded as a person. Those low entropy things and those low entropy moments and situations allow yourself to be comfortable and have that safe backing so you can then go ahead and do those on the rough, like off the cuff, random high entropy things that allow for your character development and growth, right? You need that to-do list with that very strict Google Calendar so your weekends could be completely free and filled with spontaneity for you and your friends to go fly to Paris for the weekend and experience lots of fun things. You're right. You need that daily meditation, that journaling routine every single morning to ensure that you have emotionally balanced before you step into a job, whether it's entrepreneurship, whether it's the medical field, whether it's a crazy degree, right? That could be full of so much uncertainty and such highly entropic events. You need those grounding moments to allow yourself to be in a mentally well space to be able to do those things, right? You need it. Like there's a balance, right? You need those constant people that you can rely on. So when you feel brave to try out a new relationship, to try and go for a new things, or to cut off a friendship that's no longer serving you anymore, right? For whatever reason, all of these things, right? You need those constant low entropy people that will be there for you, so you can go ahead and chase those high entropy, high reward, high knowledge, high cost type things. And so I recently decided, actually 2 days ago, to sit down and think about what are all of the things I'm avoiding in life because I feel like I'm going to fail despite me really wanting to do them. And that's a very interesting question. Because oftentimes we avoid things, obviously, clearly, if it's not for them. Like, I'm not going to start saying that I'm going to be the next Banksy because I hate painting. That's not something I'm necessarily avoiding because I want it and I'm like trying to predict the future. And I'm like, no, I'm avoiding it because I'm too scared of the uncertainty of it. I'm avoiding it because I'm like, I can't do that. Not for me. But what are the things that I'm subconsciously avoiding that I really want to do that I think will bring me a lot of joy and passion because I'm predicting really good things. One really good example I thought was traveling. I keep telling my friends I need to leave the fucking UK. Honest to God, it's showing in my skin. It's showing in my hair. I'm dull. I'm not vibrant. You know, I don't have a fake accent. Like, I don't know. I'm miserable. I'm not actually miserable, but I haven't left, and I think I have this inherent fear of traveling. I have this inherent fear of spending lots of money on that moment because I'm like, I can do money with this. I can do things for that. Oh, but what if this? Or what if this situation happens? And what if this? Because I'm trying to predict all of the possible things that might go wrong. I remember when I went to Paris with two of my best friends for the first time, I almost didn't go because I had convinced myself that unless I had gotten a tattoo, I would be sex trafficked. Moment of silence. I was so delusional to believe my prediction that they were like, "Jessie, be so for real. Let's ground ourselves in reality. You are a smart babe. This is so ridiculous." But do you see how this almost predictive and avoidance of high entropy? Because I don't travel a lot. So there are a lot of variables that I'm unfamiliar with and I don't know and I'm not comfortable with doing. So I avoid it. But actually, that's something that would bring me a lot of joy and open me to the wealth of experience of the world. Another thing I used to really avoid doing is posting on TikTok because it's not even like, okay, so I have two TikToks, okay? I have one TikTok for this podcast where I post clips for the podcast. I have zero qualms about posting on that because everybody needs to hear the genius that's coming out of my mouth. Whoa! It's those innuendo jokes again. Um, but I have this thing where I have another account which I call my public private story, which I really just wanted to talk about anime and books and superheroes and all of the really nerdy stuff that I really like that doesn't really fit in with the podcast stuff. And same with my personal YouTube channel. I wanted to do vlogging and just vlog aspects of my life or have conversations that I just again don't fit the aesthetic of the podcast channel. And I just convinced myself that somebody's gonna laugh at me. I've convinced myself that I will meet the love of my life, and then the love of my life will see my YouTube channel and be like, ugh, icky, and then go away. Do you get what I mean? I've just predicted a series of events where I feel like having those things and putting myself out there in that way is unfavorable to me. But that's not necessarily true. I'm just avoiding it because I don't know what might happen if I post this TikTok. I might get cancelled. I might post a TikTok saying Superman's really hot and somebody might cancel me. And I'm like, well, yeah. But there's so much to gain and learn from putting yourself out there. I've been trying to post a TikTok a day recently on my public and my other TikTok account. And I've also been planning a bunch of vlogs. And what has brought me has been more joy than anything else because I talk about things that I love and as a result, I'm having conversations in the comments about things um, with people that I love, but also about things that I love, anime and books, and having that dialogue and that, really truly building a sense of online community around the things that I like. Um, I just convinced myself that everybody thinks when you do social media, it's completely to, get a platform to make money, to do all of this, like a completely selfish and pursuit. And I guess it's selfish in its own ways, but I'd convinced myself that it was a weird thing to do. All of these little things, wearing a bikini, I have a fear that somebody's gonna seriously body shame me if I wear a bikini to like a beach or a pool because I'm very unconfident in my body. And I was like, I don't want that. I don't need that. But I don't know what's gonna happen. And I'm robbing myself of things that I really want to do. So that's like a really short list. But I think this summer in general, we're gonna do this challenge, guys. Geniuses, we are doing this challenge together. Okay. We need to sit down and we need to think. I implore you to think, okay, what are the things that you have seriously, seriously been avoiding that you really want to do? Is it asking that person out? Is it starting that blog, that channel, that podcast, like whatever it is? Is it auditioning for the role in the school play? Right? Is it reaching out to this really cool person you see on LinkedIn all the time? And you're like, damn, I would love to have a coffee. Like, whatever it is that you are avoiding, that you feel like would allow you to grow, and you're avoiding it because it's filled with so many uncertainties that you're afraid of. Think about it. When was the last time I took on a case, an event, or had a situation of high entropy? You know? And when you think back to that event, think about what did I learn? How did I grow? What did I gain? And then think about, I need another one of those. I need an event of high entropy. I'm not telling you, again, I'm saying this, I'm not saying go put yourself in dangerous situations and situations that are unsavory. But then again, think, okay, how have I pushed and challenged myself? It's an entropically favorable summer, guys. Entropy is in the air. I can smell it. Okay. Sun's out, buns out. Entropy is now completely in. Hot girl summer, who? Nerdy girl summer, where? It's an entropically favorable summer. Geniuses. Okay, I hope this actually all made sense because honestly, I could have sat here the whole episode And then I'll just get a message from, I don't know, Sim, and Sim's like, Jesse, this made no sense. But I hope it kind of helped you frame what I did. I feel like I'm not perfect. But I don't have to be perfect to talk about something. You know what I mean? I still think I have value in what I say. Um, and I really hope this helps some of you guys who are similar to me. I won't stop being a psychic. And if you have anything that you want me to predict, DM me. I'm joking. But I really hope you guys enjoyed this episode, geniuses. I loved thinking about it. I loved talking about it. And I will see you guys next time. I was going to say next week, but I upload bi-weekly unless I have a mini episode. And I have an idea for a mini episode. I just need to get her to say yes. And I don't know how I'm going to get her to say yes. But if I get her to say yes, there'll be a mini episode next week. I love you guys so, so much. And thank you so much for listening. Bye.
Female genius.